Hey everyone, I hope you're taking it easy and your day has been great thus far. For this video, we'll be going through a unboxing, time-lapse and a review of the Boba Fett Mech set 75369, and this particular set is out of the LEGO Star Wars range and pretty much released around third quarter of 2023, which for the point of this recording is still the current calendar year. So wrapping up the Star Wars mechs that I've been slowly going through for the past few weeks. Started with the Stormtrooper and moved on to Darth Vader, who I actually did quite enjoy building. And here we have Boba Fett, the last of the three. And the reason why I left Boba Fett as last was actually because he actually has a bit of a bigger box compared to the others, so it does make me wonder if his build will be somewhat more involved. Anyway, front of the box with a nice shot of the Boba Fett minifigure in the mech with a very interesting color scheme that actually does align quite well to Boba Fett himself. And we also have a shot of the minifig as well, and there will be that nice little single stud shooting gimmick that we're seeing quite often now. And the reason why I commented on the box size, yeah, it's actually surprisingly wider, I guess, than the Stormtrooper and Darth Vader. Back of the box, so back in an idle pose, the minifig, and just going over that shooting stud mechanic. And then at the very bottom we have the Stormtrooper and Darth Vader mix, which I've already gone through. I'll hopefully have some cards to those two videos as well. Okay, so I'll quickly open up the box. We'll have a look at the manual and the bags before the time lapse, and then after that go through the time lapse component, and then I'll do a final review. And with everything out of the packaging, front of the manual for the mech, and I will admit, just looking at that, it actually does look pretty cool. As surprisingly enough, all the mechs have looked. So, in terms of the bags, 3 bags. Bag number 1, body and minifig. Bag number 2, the 2 legs. Bag number 3, the arms and the weapon. There will be a 4th bag that has some additional bits and pieces in it, which we'll see later on, and obviously they'll become very apparent during the time lapse. Building minifig, straightforward. Building the main body, which is pretty much becoming a bit of a rinse and repeat, which is fine. And this not minifig, but this mech actually will have a backpack, which would actually be very cool because it will give that nice rounded look to the back of the mech. There's 26 steps for bag number 1. Bag number 2 will start at step 27. I don't expect it to last very long. Okay, still lasts a bit longer than usual. Okay, we're at 27 to probably about 47ish, so just over 20 steps, 21 steps, give or take. And then bag number 3 will start at step 49. Just power through these. I think we're getting quite used to seeing these. Then building the blaster, equipping it, going through the shooting mechanic. Just realized we have Boba Fett as the work in progress bar. And it looks like there will be an additional gimmick in the backpack with a actual shooting rocket, potentially. Very cool. Putting Boba Fett in the mech. Completed mech. Definitely not too bad. Some of the other Star Wars kits that have come out during this time. As I've mentioned on many occasions now, the only one that I'm still after is the Spider tank. I have seen it, but I'm hoping to get it cheaper. Parts list. Okay, so that was the manual. That will come back later. Quick look at the bags. So bag number 1, nothing too overly different. Pretty much everything that we're used to seeing for the first bag of one of these mech sets. Bag number 2. Bag number 3. I do like the interesting mix of colors. And then lastly, this quote-unquote bag number 4, which has, I'm actually not too sure what these parts are yet. I will admit I wasn't fully paying attention to them during the manual, so during the time lapse I'll definitely find out what these parts are for. Okay, unboxing done, contents done. Time for me to prep up these 3 bags of builds, go through a real-time build, and then come back and do the review. So enjoy the time lapse, and yeah, in a few minutes we'll see how this mech is. Okay, and now with the time lapse completed, here we have the completed Boba Fett Mech, the manual, which we now no longer need, and we do have a small array of spare parts. Majority of these will be the single studs for the blaster, and then everything else was just the usual Lego method of having one extra piece just in case. I have a better idea of what some of these little grey pieces are now, especially in the case of Boba Fett's helmet. Although I don't know why we had to get so many of everything, but there you go. Anyway, spare parts. Now, as for the mech itself, so just do a quick stand test. Indeed it does. So, the Boba Fett Mech from the front, side, back, the other side, and just a quick little close-up of the minifig and the main torso. So overall, definitely a very interesting looking mech because it has taken some of the color attributes of Boba Fett himself. So whilst it's still uniform with the colors, you still see, you know, the yellows, the greens, the blues, the brown, the terracotta. So very interesting mix of colors, which really does help, you know, give the mech a bit more presence, which is always a nice thing. In terms of general accessories that this particular mech has, so underneath his arm there is the little blaster for the minifig itself. I actually decided to do it this way because I thought it actually looked better attached to the mech like that. As for the mech, so the mech will have this nice little blaster weapon with the single stud shooter gimmick that we have seen many times. Stormtrooper also had the same gimmick as well. And on the back, we do have the backpack, or a backpack, and this little section here, if you push it with enough force, will basically act like a shooting missile slash rocket. So it's actually, the mech itself actually has taken a good amount of characteristics, I dare say, from Boba Fett. Okay, so before I get too carried away with the mech, we'll just have a quick look at Boba Fett himself. So, Boba Fett minifig, standard size, so I won't go into too much details about the minifig. He also does have his own little minifig based backpack as well. The other extra item that's pretty much unique to Boba Fett as opposed to a minifig, there will be a bit of movement up and down with this little item here as well. As for taking off the helmet, now the underlying head is actually only a single face, unlike a set of some of the other minifigs that are dual faces. So just the one face for Boba, and then that's pretty much putting his helmet back on. And if we really must, it's a bit worried that the mech was going to fall over there. There is Boba Fett with his blaster. Very long blaster. That's okay. Okay, put Boba back in there. I'm going to leave the blaster off for the time being because I have a feeling if I keep it on, it will just get in the way of what I'm about to do next. So, articulation, like the previous mechs before it. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ball sockets throughout the mech. Main shoulders to body, the hips, and the ankles. So because they're ball sockets, everything will get to move around 360 degrees with no issues. So it does mean that by doing so, the arms can pretty much go all the way around go out to the side, basically have a good amount of freedom to move and pose the arms accordingly. The fingers being the fingers, because they're all becoming the same type of finger build. Each of these 3 digits are individual digits, they're not all connected at the same time, so you can do different hand poses with them. As for the blaster is pretty much fixed in place. I will not test the gimmick on the video though. Now the good thing about Boba Fett, for posing purposes, his head will actually move, which was a bit of a blessing with Darth Vader, and unfortunate that the stormtroopers couldn't do it. Other areas of movement, so we do know that this front section is going to come down and close back up accordingly. As for the legs, since we already talked about the ball socket, so we know that they can do a nice 360 there. Go all the way to the front, all the way to the back, to the side, so that's always a good thing. And lastly, there's going to be the full 360 here at the base of the leg, ankle to the foot, or top of the foot, so that'll obviously be quite helpful when trying to do some poses. So if we were just to do what is probably becoming my very iconic pose, basically a nice little pose of Boba Fett like that. Okay, so we've looked at the articulation, the gimmicks, and things like that. So I guess from here on in, what are my thoughts of the Boba Fett mech? It's like the Stormtrooper and the Darth Vader mech. It's actually been quite fun. In terms of the build, the real-time build took me just about 16 minutes. So they've all been relatively on par with each other in terms of these mech builds. So for me, for shy of 20 minutes, I got to do something fun and constructive. Not as stressed now, quite enjoyable, and can easily be done in a single setting and isn't too messy. So definitely one of those very nice, quick and easy builds. Doesn't take too long, and the end product is, decent value for its price point. The articulation within the mech is very nice. Design, the colors, the looks, very typical Boba Fett. So it's a very character-driven mech, which I think is very cool. Just trying to think, is there anything else that I thought was really good? Articulation we've covered. Basically, it's the same as the other 2 mechs in the sense that 1, it's obviously a very Star Wars themed one, and 2, it does have a bit of playability up its sleeve, despite the fact that each of these mechs have had a very universal build. And just how some of these armorizations come on is pretty much how it differs. From what wasn't as great, it's unfortunate that as these mech kits have continued to quote-unquote evolve over time, they've lost some articulation. So these universal U-bends, or whatever they like to be called, whilst they're great at keeping things uniform, it's unfortunate because no elbow, no knee. So it does actually limit some of the mobility that I think earlier sets had. Which is okay. The design itself does feel a lot nicer, a bit more sturdier, and as I said not too long ago, more uniform. So I think that's probably my biggest little quote-unquote critique about it. But overall, the Boba Fett mech is really, really good, and quite enjoyable. And I'm definitely glad the minifig can actually move his head. So that alone actually does help, especially with the posing, to get some of the just the visual eye cues more aligned to where they should be. Would I recommend Boba Fett? I would say yes. I don't know who my favourite of the 3 mechs are. I mean, they're all relatively different to each other, but surprisingly they've all been quite enjoyable. and I'm definitely glad I've been able to pick up all 3. So definitely, if you get a chance to pick up all 3, because they are different enough. Just be careful with the Stormtrooper, because that's where you do get this weird little army build / troop building fascination, which I know I started going down. I do know a few other people who did something similar as well, so it's a very easy trap. Just be careful. I think I alluded to it, but I didn't explicitly say it. For a price point, and this set actually did come down a few dollars after I picked it up from where I picked it up from. I'd say it's okay. It's where it needs to be. Could it be a little bit cheaper? Yes. However, inflation is what it is, and I think if I went back, 3 or 4 years, if it had maintained that price point, then I would definitely say yes. Very strong value for money. So I guess factoring in inflation, it's still good value for money. And for a 20-minute build, what can you do? In fact, it's almost basically $1 per minute worth of build. Interesting. I'm going to leave the unboxing time lapse and review there. I think we've covered everything for the Boba Fett Mech, and yeah, I've quite enjoyed it, and I think people who do enjoy the character will definitely find some enjoyment out of the set as well. Thank you for watching this triple video of a unboxing time lapse and review of the Boba Fett Mech set 75369. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. All of this does help support the channel, and I do greatly appreciate it. Extra content can also be found on my Instagram account, the link in the description below. It's also the same handle as the channel. Now, as a quick little teaser, especially for anyone who wasn't even aware there's a community post, this will not be the end of the Star Wars Lego. The mechs, yes, for the 3 of them. But as of recording this video, I am slowly putting together the Executor Superstar Destroyer. So hopefully a few more days worth of building that, and then a few days thereafter to do a review of the set and basically publish it. So definitely keep an eye out if you want some more Star Wars Lego content to have a quick watch through and get a bit of a better idea of what you're potentially dealing with if you do find a set of interest. With that all being said, stay safe, take care, and I will catch you all in a future video, whether it's Lego Star Wars, Lego, or something else on the channel. See ya.